Imagine for a second that your sibling's life is attached to a pearl necklace.
Okay.
And it's resting right against your collarbone. For years, it's just, a piece of jewelry.
Right. Just totally normal.
Yeah. A little heavy maybe, but cold and dormant. But today, while you're standing in the middle of the bakery with your hands just completely covered in flour, that pearl suddenly flares to life.
Oh, God.
It burns so blindingly hot that it actually physically blisters the skin on your chest.
That is visceral.
It really is.
Wow.
And you know instantly, like down to your marrow, that you have exactly 30 days to save your sister from a curse. And this curse is designed to slowly, agonizingly eat her soul.
Which is just a terrifying concept.
Right. So what do? I mean, do you run? Do you hide?
Or do you walk straight into the darkest corner of the kingdom and hire a mythical serial killer to help you tear the world apart?
Exactly. It's the kind of impossible choice that just completely redefines who a person is.
Yeah, it's the perfect entry point for what we're looking at today. It really is. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping in for a massive journey through a world where the magical and the visceral just totally collide. We're immersing ourselves in the universe of Mayhem and the Mortal, which is this incredibly intricate romantasy novel by New York Times bestselling author Shanora Williams.
And we have a phenomenal stack of sources on the table between us today to help unpack all of this.
We really do.
We've got direct excerpts from the novel, the structural breakdown from the table of contents, extensive character dossier.
Which are so detailed, by the way.
Right, and the foundational religious and magical texts of this world, which is known as the Teachings of Orvina, plus a sprawling geographical map of Thelanor.
It's a massive, rich tapestry of material. And our goal today isn't just to, recount a plot for you. We want to really examine how this story purposefully weaves melanin and diverse cultural touchstones into the very fabric of its magic system.
Which is a huge seismic shift in the fantasy genre. Completely. We're going to look at how it takes classic, sometimes really deeply entrenched fantasy quest tropes and just turns them completely inside out.
Yeah, so, okay, let's unpack this. Because to truly understand the desperate, terrifying choices our characters are going to make, we have to understand the board they are playing on.
Right, the world itself.
Exactly. We have to understand the brutal, unforgiving world of Thelanor. And to do that, we actually have to go all the way back to the cosmic beginning. We're talking about gods.
Right. To understand the dirt the characters walk on, you have to look at the sky.
That's a great way to put it. Thelanor was shaped by a fundamental cosmic binary, two opposing deities. On one side, you have Orvina.
The goddess of life and light.
Yes. According to the lore in our sources, she literally created all living things in Thelanor. Her ultimate utopian goal was for her creations to exist freely, to roam in absolute peace.
But, to facilitate that, she gifted a select portion of her creations with a direct spark of her own magical ability.
Right, and those beings became the sorcerers.
But utopias in fantasy novels rarely stay utopian for long, do they?
Never. Because on the flip side of Orvina, you have Zaimur.
Zaimur is the god of corruption.
He is the exact antithesis of everything Orvina built. Where she creates life and light, Zaimur crafts feral beasts, shadowy aberrations, and monsters.
And his creations weren't just random acts of chaos, right?
No, not at all. They were specifically biologically designed to outnumber and hunt down Orvina's creations. It was an existential threat to the entire world.
So Orvina made the ultimate play.
She did. To protect Thelanor, she fought Zaimur and managed to trap him in the lowest of his hells.
But the cost of that victory was absolute.
It was. I mean, she sacrificed her own physical divine form. She essentially shattered herself, imbruing all the land of Thelanor with her remaining essence.
To act as a permanent magical ward against the dark.
Exactly. So when our characters are walking through forests or over mountains, they are quite literally walking on the sacrificed remains of a goddess who gave up her life to hold back the dark.
Wow. Which is just an incredible foundation for a magic system.
It really is.
And it sets up this intensely strict societal hierarchy across the map of Thelanor. Because, magic isn't distributed evenly, right?
Not even a little bit. At the absolute top of the food chain, in terms of sheer political and destructive power, you have the sorcerers.
Because they inherited that pure, direct, magical spark from Orvina.
Right. But as you move down the ladder, the magic dilutes. You have the charmers.
And the text is almost brutally dismissive of them.
Oh, yeah. It notes they're really only good for sideshow tricks.
Yeah, it's a very condescending societal view. Charmers can make plates levitate or summon little bursts of light to hand out candies to children.
They possess magic, but it's parlor magic.
Right, it's domesticated. It holds no real geopolitical weight, so they don't hold any real power.
And below them, you have the bestials.
These are beings with distinct animalistic traits integrated into human forms. The excerpts describe minotaurs, a white tiger bestial wearing a crisp military uniform.
A porcupine bestial working a shift as a bartender.
Yeah, they are fully integrated into society, but it's a very precarious existence. Sometimes they hold royal titles, and sometimes they face intense systemic prejudice based entirely on their biology.
And then sitting at the very bottom of this sprawling power structure, you have the mortals.
No innate magic, no enhanced animalistic strength.
Just fragile, ordinary humans trying to navigate a world where a minor disagreement between sorcerers could, like, level a city block.
But here's the thing about this world building that I find so vital, and it's something we have to highlight right up front.
The dedication.
Yes. The author, Shanora Williams, includes a dedication right at the front of the book. It reads, "For every reader who has wanted more melanin woven into stories with magic."
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that dedication isn't just a nice paratextual sentiment. It is the architectural blueprint of Thelanor.
Absolutely.
If you look at the history of high fantasy literature for the last, 80 years, the default setting has been overwhelmingly, exhaustingly Eurocentric.
Right. White skin, European medieval political structures, Western folklore creatures.
Williams is actively, methodically dismantling that default. We see it in the rich character descriptions.
Yeah, we have mortals and incredibly powerful sorcerers described with umber skin, with rich brown skin, with coils and protective styles in their hair.
Even the goddess Orvina herself, the creator of the world, is depicted in ancient sculptures as a woman with deep umber skin and wavy ebony hair.
It normalizes a beautifully diverse spectrum of humanity as the absolute baseline for epic fantasy.
It says you don't have to be European to wield the magic that shapes the world.
It's a profound and necessary shift, but looking at the magic itself, I want to push back on something in the lore, or at least I want to question the rigidity of this cosmic setup.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, the texts present this incredibly strict binary. Orvina is light and good, Zaira is dark and evil. But if Orvina created all the sorcerers and imbued them with her light aura...
Why do we see sorcerers using dark magic?
Exactly. Why are there corrupt, vicious sorcerers operating openly in the Mariva Empire? To me, it feels like the reality on the ground isn't a coin flip between light and dark.
It feels more like a spectrum.
Yeah, where human choices dictate the shade of the magic.
It's tempting to view it through that modern relativistic lens of a spectrum. But we have to remember the lore literally roots this in two distinct, opposed deities.
So it's not just a spectrum.
The text doesn't suggest that dark magic is just a misunderstood shade of Orvina's light. Dark magic is a distinct, corrupting force tied to Zamor.
I see.
When sorcerers use it, they aren't just shifting on a spectrum. They are actively dabbling in a volatile, parasitic power source that wasn't meant for them.
Okay, so it's less like adjusting a dimmer switch and more like plugging a 120-volt appliance into a nuclear reactor.
Precisely. And that brings us to the most fascinating piece of theology in our sources.
From the teachings of Orvina.
Right. It explicitly states, wisdom is necessary for evolution, kindness is needed for peace and hope. Nobility is imperative whilst dwelling in Thelanor.
But the crucial world-defining line is the last one.
And the bravest in heart is the source of true prosperity.
The bravest in heart. Not the one who can throw the biggest fireball.
Exactly. It completely upends the societal hierarchy. The sorcerers might hold the physical and political dominion, but Orvina's own scripture implies that pure, uncorrupted mortality.
The sheer, terrifying ability to be brave when you have absolutely zero magical armor to protect you.
Yes. That might actually be the ultimate, purest power in Thelanor. It suggests that mortals, the people at the very bottom being stepped on, hold a profound spiritual currency that the sorcerers fundamentally lack.
That is massive, because to see how that cosmic theory actually plays out in the dirt and the blood of this world, we have to zoom all the way in.
We have to leave the theology behind.
We do. We have to look at a very normal mortal who gets dragged, kicking and screaming, into the most dangerous part of this magical ecosystem. We need to talk about Zaira Quinlock.
Zaira is our protagonist, and she's entirely ordinary by design.
She really is.
She's a 20-year-old mortal living in the Mariva Empire. She works as a baker in a shop called the Flower Tower. Her life is small, contained, and safe.
Yeah, she spends her free time reading history books, drinking tea, and volunteering at local refugee centers.
But that quiet life is a trauma response.
Because she's an orphan. We learn from the character dossiers that her parents died in the Ember Coast attacks when she was just a child.
Her father was a doctor, her mother a nurse. They didn't have magic, but they stayed in a burning city, trying to heal people as their home collapsed around them.
They died heroes, but they still died. So Zaira has grown up with this cavernous sense of loss.
And it has made her fiercely, almost recklessly protective of the only family she has left in the world.
Her sister, Anala.
And Anela is the catalyst for everything that follows. Unlike Zaira, who clings to the safety of the bakery, Anela works in the belly of the beast.
She is a night maiden at a fortress called the Shadow Nest.
Now, the Shadow Nest isn't just a tough neighborhood. It is the private, invite-only stronghold of a man named Sephirin.
Sephirin is widely recognized as the most corrupt, dangerous, grim sorcerer in the kingdom.
His stronghold is built on literally cursed land, where a dark historical ritual once eradicated everyone who lived there. The air smells of rot and dark magic.
It's an abyss, and an Ella works right in the middle of it.
Which brings us back to that visceral moment we started with, the inciting incident.
Right. Zaira is at the flower tower. She's kneading dough. The bell on the door is ringing. Life is normal. And suddenly, this pearl pendant she wears around her neck becomes searing hot.
This pearl is magically bonded to Anela.
It's an ingenious piece of magical world building.
It acts as a biological proximity alarm for distress. If Anela is annoyed or dealing with a minor nuisance, the pearl gets warm.
But if the pearl is burning, if it's blistering Zaira's skin, it means Anala is in imminent mortal peril. It's the ultimate push notification, but stripped of all the digital detachment. Like a smartwatch, but synced directly to your sibling's terror.
That's exactly what it is. And Zaira's reaction tells you everything you need to know about who she is. She doesn't consult the city guard.
She drops the dough, ignores her boss yelling at her, and literally runs toward the most dangerous sorcerer's stronghold in the Empire.
She hikes for nearly an hour through a dense, dark forest just to reach the perimeter of the Shadow Nest.
She has to sneak past armed guards. She encounters a terrifyingly thin, pale woman dressed in leather who tries to intimidate her into turning back.
But Zaira pushes through, eventually descending into a literal subterranean dungeon beneath the fortress.
The environmental storytelling here is so grim. Floating red magical orbs provide the only light. The air is thick with the smell of decay.
She passes empty cells that are filled with nothing but piles of ash.
The cremated remains of Sephirin's previous prisoners.
Right. And finally, on the cold stone floor of a cell, she finds her sister.
And the visual of Anala in that cell is haunting. The text notes that this usually vibrant, energetic girl is completely hollowed out.
Her beautiful brown skin is turned into ashen gray. Her hair is matted.
Zaira grips the cold iron bars, desperate, begging to know what happened. And Anala, barely able to speak, confesses.
She tried to steal an indigo crystal from Sephirin's private study. She thought she could smuggle it out and sell it on the black market for some extra coin to give him a better life.
A petty theft.
But the punishment Sephirin hands down is astronomically disproportionate to the crime, and the mechanics of that punishment are deeply intentional.
Anala explains that the locks on the cell are controlled entirely by Sephirin's mind, so there are no physical keys for Zaira to steal.
But escaping the physical cell wouldn't matter anyway.
Because Sephirin has placed a death curse directly onto Anala's soul.
Anela tells her sister, "He said the curse will kill me within 30 days. He said it will be a slow and painful death, that I deserve it for betraying his trust."
A 30-day ticking clock. And I want to pause on that because why 30 days? Why the theatricality?
What's fascinating here is the sheer sadistic psychology of Sephirin's choice. We know from the lore that Sephirin is an immensely powerful sorcerer.
Yeah, if a mortal steals from him, he could incinerate her on the spot with a flick of his wrist.
He could turn her to ash, like the prisoners in the adjacent cells. But he actively chooses not to. He gives her exactly 30 days to wither away in unimaginable agony.
Why?
Because a quick death is just an execution. A slow 30-day decay is an exhibition. It is psychological warfare.
Wow.
He is demonstrating to Anala, to Zaira, to his entire guild of guards, and to himself, his absolute unyielding dominion over mortals.
It's an enforcement of the hierarchy we talked about earlier. Mortals are insects to him, and he wants to watch the insects slowly stop twitching.
Exactly. And Zaira's reaction to this horrifying realization is what cements her as the anchor of this entire narrative.
Because Anala is weeping, begging Zaira to leave. She says, I want you to live your life and live it well. Forget about me.
Zaira refuses.
She leaves the dungeon, runs out into the dark forest, collapses against the trunk of a tree, and just weeps until there's nothing left inside her.
But then that absolute despair crystallizes into pure resolve. She doesn't have magic. She doesn't know which end of a sword to hold. But she has an unbreakable loyalty.
And she possesses a very cold, pragmatic understanding of her world.
Right. She realizes a terrifying truth. A corrupt sorcerer sitting in a fortress of dark magic isn't going to negotiate with a mortal baker who smells like yeast.
No. To fight the monster in the dark, she needs to acquire a monster of her own. She needs a weapon that operates outside the laws of the Empire.
And the only place you find a monster willing to fight the grim is at the absolute bottom of polite society.
So she wipes her tears, walks back to the city, and pushes through the doors of a tavern called the Tilted Crystal.
The Tilted Crystal is exactly what you picture when you think of a wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Right.
It's a rough, loud tavern packed with scarred mercenaries, disenfranchised bestials, and rogue sorcerers. It's the kind of place where you go to hire people to do the things the city guard won't do.
Bounty hunting, smuggling, murder.
Yeah.
Zaira knows exactly what she's looking for. She needs someone lethal enough to escort her to an island called the Shallows.
Which is a place literally synonymous with death.
Yeah, to find a mythical prosperity stone, which she believes is the only artifact powerful enough to break Anala's death curse. She scans the room. She ignores the charmers doing their cheap parlor tricks in the corner.
And her eyes lock onto a man sitting alone, tucked away in a shadowed booth.
The visual introduction of Thane Valkor is incredibly striking. He's massive. He's wearing thick leather buffers.
These are specialized armors designed for brutal, close-quarters brawl fighting.
Right. He is heavily armed, carrying multiple swords and a terrifying assortment of daggers. Pinned to his chest is a translucent crystal brooch enclosed in metal carved with ancient sigils, which immediately identifies him as a sorcerer.
But the most unsettling detail is his face.
He wears a dark mask over the lower half, and the parts of his face and neck that are visible are covered in deep, jagged scars.
Zaira, wearing her literal baking apron, walks right up to this intimidating, heavily armed killer and basically word vomits her entire desperate pitch.
It is such a great scene because the juxtaposition is almost comical. She marches up to him, trembling but making eye contact, and says something to the effect of, "You don't know me, and that's fine, but you look like a guy who gets what he wants," and she offers to hire him.
Thane doesn't even blink. He doesn't say a word for an agonizingly long time. He just slowly cleans the blade of a dagger and stares at her.
Eventually, his voice is a low gravel. He demands double the gold coin she offered to be delivered at dawn the next morning. If she doesn't show up with the money, he tells her she might as well go pick out flowers for her sister's grave.
It is the absolute peak of the grumpy fantasy archetype, meeting a terrified but impossibly determined sunshine protagonist.
It's a classic setup, but the reality of what Thane actually is doesn't truly shit Zaira until their journey officially begins.
Because to leave the city limits, they have to navigate through a deeply downtrodden, lawless slum known as the Scraps.
It's a place built on desperation, and the moment they step into its labyrinth of alleyways, they are ambushed.
And this isn't a minor mugging. It's a visceral, terrifying assault.
A creature called a Skrellin drops from the shadows and attacks Zaira.
The source material describes this thing in nightmare-inducing detail. Putrid green skin, red-rimmed yellow eyes, and massive fangs dripping with venomous saliva.
It lunges for Zaira. Thane reacts with impossible speed. He steps in, puts a gleaming silver blade directly to the creature's throat, and draws a line of thick, inky black blood, calmly threatening to decapitate it if it moves an inch.
But the Skrellin is just the distraction.
Right, the real threat steps out of the shadows. It's Garen.
A local, heavily armed crime boss sporting a red vest and an eye patch, accompanied by a small army of his enforcers.
Garen wants Thane dead, and he wants to take Zaira to sell or ransom. He explicitly orders his men to slaughter them.
What follows is not a polite, choreographed fantasy sword fight. It is an absolute massacre.
Zaira is pushed against a brick wall, watching in sheer, paralyzed horror as Thane goes to work. He doesn't just fight, he dismantles them.
He swings his heavy blades with terrifying precision, cleanly decapitating men, driving swords through their hearts.
But it's his magic that makes Zaira's blood run cold. He throws his magical daggers into his enemies' chests, and then uses his sorcerer's abilities to magically rip the daggers backward out of their bodies and back into his hands.
Tearing them apart from the inside out.
But the most horrifying detail, as he moves, thick, writhing black shadows seem to cling to his magic, bleeding out of his aura.
And that visual detail, the black shadows woven into his attacks, is the ultimate giveaway. Zaira is a history buff. She's read the old texts. She realizes she hasn't just hired a grumpy bodyguard.
She has hired a night carver.
Yeah?
Okay, so Zaira sees these black shadows clinging to his blades, and she panics. But based on the history we discussed earlier, I thought the night carvers were completely wiped out centuries ago.
Right.
How is this guy standing in an alleyway using extinct magic? What exactly is a night carver?
To understand the terror Zaira feels in that moment, we have to pull back and look at the geopolitical history of Thielenor. Centuries ago, there was a devastating, continent-spanning war between two major powers, the Mariva Empire and the Kingdom of Ruvain. During that bloodbath, a highly elite, incredibly secretive faction of shadow assassins emerged. They were the Night Carvers.
They utilized black magic to move unseen, to strike with lethal, unnatural precision.
Exactly. They were so devastatingly effective and so impossible to contain that when the war finally ended, the acting kings of the realms passed a universal draconian law.
Which was?
Any sorcerer caught using black magic in conjunction with combat would be classified as a night carver and executed immediately. No trial, no appeals.
Wow, they were hunted to extinction. A group called the Divine, which is essentially the elite, highly sanctioned, magically gifted military force of the Empire, was tasked with eradicating them.
They hunted the night carvers down one by one, and the mechanics of the execution were brutal.
They would force-feed the assassins, muting elixirs potions designed to chemically and magically sever a sorcerer's connection to the innate magic in their blood.
Once the assassin was rendered powerless, a screaming mortal, they were beheaded or hanged in public squares. The era of the shadow assassin was definitively over in the history books.
Supposedly. But here is Thane Valkor, standing in an alleyway in the scraps, using those exact shadows to butcher a dozen men in broad daylight.
Now, what's crucial here, and this goes back to our earlier discussion about the mechanics of magic, is how Thane explains his abilities to Zaira later that night.
Right. He clarifies that he isn't using pure, unadulterated black magic. He tells her he uses a technique called gray magic.
Yes.
How does that work mechanically? Because if black magic is corrupting, how do you just use a little bit of it?
It's an incredibly dangerous, volatile biological hack. Thane was taught by a clandestine organization known as the Shadow Guild how to artificially weave a very thin thread of black magic from Zamora's realm into his natural or Vina-given white magic.
Think of it like a mechanic injecting nitrous oxide into a standard engine.
That's a great analogy. It massively, explosively increases his lethality and his speed, but it's highly unstable.
If he uses too much or loses his focus for even a second, the dark magic acts as a parasite.
It will consume his white magic, fully corrupt his soul, and turn him into one of Zamora's mindless feral beasts. He is constantly fighting a war inside his own veins just to wield his weapons.
So think about what you would do in Zaira's position. You're a baker, you just hired a bodyguard, and 3 days later, you watch him decapitate a squad of mercenaries using an outlawed, mythically lethal form of dark magic.
Yeah, you realize you were traveling with the magical equivalent of a biological weapon who is actively being hunted by the government.
Are you running for the hills, or are you sticking close because he's your only ticket to the shallows?
It is the ultimate pragmatic choice, born entirely of desperation. Zaira actually tries the first option.
She does. After the bloodbath in the scraps, she is so terrified of the monster she unleashed that she tries to slip away into the night.
But Thane, with his enhanced senses, catches her easily.
And he doesn't try to comfort her. He lays out the cold, hard, tactical truth. He tells her, there's no one else out there with skills like mine who will agree to help you. You'll never make it through the jungles of the shallows alone. You go back now, and you might as well start picking out flowers for her grave.
She hates him in that moment, but she knows he's right. She is trapped by the impossible stakes of her own quest.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because as terrifying and capable as Thane is, surviving the wilds of Thielenor and reaching an island of death requires more than just one rogue assassin and a very determined baker.
Over the course of their journey toward the coast, this solitary, desperate quest accidentally accumulates an entire squad. a found family.
And this is where Shanora Williams does some of her best, most layered writing.
She uses the assembling of this adventuring party to completely subvert classic, often tired fantasy archetypes. Let's really look at the group they gather, starting with the stop at the Kamtar Inn.
The Kamtar Inn is where the story shifts from a duo to an ensemble. They walk into this massive, rustic tavern to rest, and we are introduced to Renthia and Torjak Kamtar.
They are minotaurs, and they run the inn. But Williams completely flips the traditional mythological script here.
In classic fantasy, the Minotaur is always a mindless, hulking male brute swinging an axe in a labyrinth.
Exactly. But here, the biological and societal dynamics are fascinating. Torjak and Renthia are twins. However, Torjak is the last male minotaur in existence in the known regions of Thelanor.
If he dies before producing an heir, their entire genetic lineage is permanently extinguished.
He is physically large, yes, but he is gentle. He manages the inn. He isn't the warrior. He is the precious, vulnerable cargo that must be protected at all costs.
The protector of the lineage is his sister, Renthia, and her visual design is so striking.
She's incredibly tall, powerfully muscular, and wears heavy leather buffers like Thane. She has the large, expressive ears and the sweeping horns of a minotaur, and she has hooves instead of feet.
But otherwise, she presents with mortal features. She doesn't wield a crude club. She wields a massive, elegantly lethal scythe sword.
She is the fiercely capable warrior, keeping her vulnerable brother alive. She completely subverts the male brute trope by becoming the hyper-competent matriarchal defender.
And then, crashing into this dynamic, you have the royal addition to the party, Prince Kelrian Shator of the Burnwood region.
When we first meet Kelrian, he embodies the absolute worst of the stereotypical arrogant, pampered royal archetype.
He's incredibly wealthy, he constantly smells of expensive ale, he flirts relentlessly and inappropriately with Zaira.
And he is so obnoxious that Thane actively debates punching him in the face multiple times an hour.
But Kelrian is hiding a complex biology beneath the silk shirts. He is half mortal and half bestial. The only immediate visual giveaway are his striking golden lion eyes.
And later in the narrative, when the group is pinned down and facing certain death, Kelrian proves he isn't just a pampered rich kid. He taps into his bestial half.
And it isn't a magical, sparkling transformation. It is described as of the brawl is the crucible. They are resting at the inn when a large band of heavily armed mercenaries kicks the doors in.
They are tracking Thane to collect a bounty. And this isn't a simple cinematic bar fight with people broking chairs over each other's backs.
The mercenaries threaten to lock the doors and burn the inn to the ground with everyone inside,
Which forces Renthia's hand. The protector of the inn steps up. With one blindingly fast swing of her massive scythe sword, she decapitates the mercenary leader.
On the backswing, she slices another armored man cleanly in half. It is absolute, terrifying carnage. The smell of ale is immediately replaced by the smell of copper and blood.
But the mercenaries are just the vanguard. The real threat, the true apex predator, steps through the shattered doors while the chaos is unfolding.
A masked assassin wearing dark gear heavily accented with bright red stitching. He doesn't use weapons, he wields a violently powerful, crackling blue magic. This is Malik.
Malik is an elite assassin for the Grimm. He works directly for Sephirin, the man who cursed Sidira's sister, and Malik is on a completely different power level.
With a flick of his wrist, his blue magic violently suspends the massive Torjak in the air, slowly crushing him. He uses an invisible magical grip to choke Zaira, lifting her off her feet.
It takes the absolute combined desperate efforts of the entire group to survive.
Zephyr the Myobi unleashes a stream of fire to blind him. Renthia attacks his flank to break his concentration.
And finally, Thane uses his shadow-infused speed to close the distance and run his broadsword straight through Malik's heart, killing him instantly.
But the aftermath of this victory is devastating. The Kamtar Inn is utterly destroyed. Bodies are piled among the splintered wood. The roof is caving in.
Renthia's entire livelihood is in ruins. Knowing that more of Sephirin's Grimm will inevitably come to investigate Malik's death, and desperate to keep her brother Torjak moving and safe from retaliation,
Renthia agrees to pack up what little they have left and join Zaira and Thane on the grueling journey to the Shallows. The party is officially formed, bonded not by friendship, but by shared trauma and spilled blood.
But as this incredibly capable lethal group pushes forward through swamps and across mountain passes, it becomes painfully clear that the physical dangers, the Skrellins, the mercenaries, the Grimm assassins, are secondary to the immense, suffocating emotional baggage they are all carrying.
We see this brilliantly, painfully explored when the group is forced to seek out Fravella.
Fravella is a seer. To navigate the impossibly lethal magical currents surrounding the island of the Shallows, the group needs an artifact called the Kelvinite Sphere.
Fravella possesses it. They find her living deep within a dark, humid, echoing cave system. And the physical description of Fravella is pure, visceral horror.
She isn't just blind. Her eyes haven't just lost their sight. They've been violently gouged out, and the empty eyelids have been crudely stitched shut with thick black thread.
She is terrifying. And Fravella doesn't operate on a cash economy. She doesn't want their gold coin. She demands a psychological toll in exchange for the sphere.
She points a trembling, scarred finger directly at Thane and demands his deepest, darkest fear. She demands the secret that torments his soul and turns his dreams into waking nightmares.
And she forces him, using her magical compulsion, to confess it out loud in front of the entire group, including Zaira.
And this forced confession completely recontextualizes everything we thought we knew about our grumpy, lethal shadow assassin.
Thane's voice breaks as he reveals that he wasn't always a monster living in the shadows. He and his younger brother, Koa, were once proud, idealistic soldiers for the divine.
They wore the uniform. They were the good guys protecting the innocent.
But Sephirin, the exact same corrupt, grim sorcerer who cursed Zaira's sister, saw their raw talent. He recognized their ambition, and he manipulated it.
Sephirin spent months slowly poisoning their minds, convincing them that the kingdom was corrupt, and eventually coercing them to defect and join the Shadow Guild.
Once he had them under his thumb, Sephirin forced Thane and young Koa to infiltrate the royal vault and steal a massively powerful, destabilizing artifact called the Sunderstone.
And that's where the trap snapped shut. When Thane finally realized the depths of Sephirin's depravity, that they were being used as disposable pawns in a plot to violently dethrone the Queen of Mariva and plunge the continent into chaos, he tried to run.
He grabbed Koa and tried to escape the guild in the dead of night.
But Sephirin anticipated it. The guild caught them easily.
And to teach Thane an unforgettable lesson about loyalty and power, Sephirin didn't kill Thane. Instead, he forced Thane to his knees and he slit young Koa's throat right in front of him, letting his brother bleed out in his arms.
It is a staggering, heartbreaking revelation. Suddenly the mask, the buffers, the reckless use of soul-corrupting gray magic, the brutal, unfeeling killings, it all makes sense.
Thane's entire existence is fueled by a desperate, all-consuming need for revenge against Sephirin and an overwhelming, crushing guilt that his ambition led his little brother directly to his slaughter.
He wears his trauma like heavy iron armor to make sure nothing can ever hurt him like that again.
And this theme of trauma specifically, how different individuals and societies respond to catastrophic loss, permeates the entire world building of the novel.
Shortly after escaping Fravella's caves with the Kelvinite Sphere, the group encounters the Emelan Elementalists, led by a fiercely intimidating woman named Queen Giaudera.
The Elementalists are fascinating. They are a unique tribe of sorcerers who wield environmental magic. They can control sprawling vines, manipulate the earth, bend nature to their will.
But they live in absolute, heavily guarded isolation, deep in the mountains. They shoot first and ask questions never.
And Zaira, leaning on her love of history, explains exactly why. She recounts the dark history of the Elementalists to the group.
Centuries ago, they didn't live in isolation. But other kingdoms and empires viewed their environmental magic not as a gift, but as a weapon to be exploited.
The Elementalists were relentlessly hunted. Their people were enslaved in chains, their elders were tortured, and their children were murdered by monarchs who wanted to weaponize their magic for territorial wars.
The Elementalists only survived annihilation by finally using their magic to cause catastrophic earthquakes and massive floods, drowning the invading armies and destroying their oppressors.
After that, they walled themselves off from the rest of the world, adopting a posture of extreme, lethal paranoia.
It's a macrocosm of Thane's internal struggle. The Elementalist society suffered horrific, unimaginable trauma, and their collective response was permanent isolation and lethal defensiveness.
Thane suffered horrific, unimaginable trauma, and his individual response was to become a weapon of permanent isolation and lethal defensiveness.
But this is where the thematic brilliance of the novel shines, because Zaira serves as the ultimate counter-argument to both Thane and the Elementalists.
Exactly. I want to push back on Thane's entire worldview here. Thane fundamentally believes that he has to carry his guilt alone. He thinks that emotional isolation and physical violence are the only valid responses to a cruel, unforgiving world.
But look at Zaira. Zaira watched her city burn. She lost her parents to the Ember Coast fires when she was a child.
She is an orphaned mortal refugee living in a world ruled by gods and monsters who view her as collateral damage. She has every right, every justification to be bitter, guarded, and violent.
But she isn't.
No. Instead, she bakes bread to feed her neighbors. She spends her weekends volunteering at refugee centers, helping people who suffered the same fate she did. She risks her life, without hesitation, for her sister.
Zaira proves to Thane, through her actions, that trauma doesn't have to turn you into a weapon. It can turn you into a shield.
Her radical empathy, her hope, is an active, defiant, exhausting choice in a world that desperately wants her to be cynical.
And it is precisely that active, defiant, selfless hope that makes her both incredibly powerful and tragically vulnerable. All of this narrative momentum, the shared trauma of the end, the revelation of Thane's guilt, the slow, tentative trust building between this found family, it all barrels toward the climax when they finally reach their destination.
The Island of the Shallows.
And the Shallows is a waking nightmare. Zaira knows the history it used to be called Norivan. Centuries ago, it was a literal paradise, the lush, beautiful home of an ancient, godlike sorcerer named Azadel.
But now, it is a lethal, rotting jungle. The environment itself is actively trying to digest them. The air is thick with poisonous spores.
At one point, as they are hacking their way through the undergrowth, a giant, bloated gray leech drops from the canopy and attaches itself directly to Algar's neck.
It starts draining his blood so fast he goes pale, and Thane has to use his magic to literally burn the parasite off Algar's flesh before it kills him.
They fight their way through this oppressive hellscape, losing blood and energy until they finally reach the epicenter, the ancient Temple of Elfur.
To even gain entry, they have to use a clever, painful trick, using daggers to carve the ancient symbol of wisdom deeply into their own palms, offering their blood to the stone doors.
The doors grind open and they step inside, and this is where the bottom completely falls out of the story.
Zaira is exhausted, bleeding, but she is hopeful. She's scanning the ancient temple, looking for the prosperity stone, the artifact that is going to cure Anela's death curse.
But she doesn't see it. She turns to Thane, asking where it is.
And Thane just looks at her, his golden eyes filled with a terrible, heavy sorrow, and he admits the truth.
There is no prosperity stone. It's a myth. It doesn't exist.
Thane dragged a mortal baker through ambushes, through the treacherous scraps, past undead monsters, and onto a literal island of death, not for a healing stone.
He brought her here for the Tome of Azadel. It is the single most powerful, ancient spellbook in all of Thelanor, and it is resting on a glowing pedestal right in the center of the temple.
The betrayal here is so multi-layered it takes your breath away. It is not just that Thane lied about the item they were retrieving, it is why he needed Zaira to come with him.
Later in the narrative, Sephron actually explains the complex magical mechanics of this temple, and it is a brilliant piece of lore. The Temple of Elfur cannot be tricked by brute force.
A sorcerer cannot just blast the pedestal with lightning to take the tome.
The temple's ancient ward requires the blood of a mortal to unlock the book. But not just any mortal. It requires the blood of a brave and noble mortal who offers it willingly.
It is the magical mechanics of absolute consent.
Precisely. The ancient magic of the temple actively scans the soul of the person standing before it. It seeks a mortal whose heart contains more hope than fear, someone who genuinely cares for the lives of others more than their own survival.
A sorcerer cannot drag a terrified hostage in, cut their hand, and force them to bleed on the altar. The magic will reject it because the intent isn't pure.
Thane knew this.
Yeah.
He looked at Zaira in that tavern. He saw her pure, desperate, entirely selfless love for her dying sister. He saw her nobility.
And he weaponized it. He used the purity of her desperation as a biological, spiritual lockpick to access a weapon of mass destruction to fuel his revenge.
It is so devastating. How do you recover from that?
You're Zaira. You're standing in a damp, ancient temple. You are realizing that the fiercely protective man you have bonded with, the man you have bled with and are starting to develop deep, complicated romantic feelings for, viewed your sister's impending, agonizing death as nothing more than a convenient tactical tool to get what he wanted.
She is standing there, absorbing this absolute molecular shattering of trust. And before she could even scream at him, before she could even process the betrayal, the shadows in the temple shift, and Maliek attacks.
Yes. The grim assassin that Thane ran his broadsword straight through the heart back at the Camtar Inn, he is back, but he is profoundly changed.
The biological horror of Malik's resurrection is explicitly detailed in the text. His skin has turned a necrotizing ashen gray. His eyes, which were once filled with arrogant fury, are now a cold, dead, glowing blue.
And most terrifyingly, thick black veins that look exactly like writhing spider legs crawl up his throat and across his face.
How is he alive? Thane destroyed his heart.
He isn't alive. Sephron used high-level, forbidden dark magic to resurrect the corpse. The dark magic is essentially acting as an artificial parasitic nervous system, animating the dead tissue and forcing it to fight.
Malik is functionally undead, and he has brought a highly trained team of grim assassins into the temple to steal the tome of Azadel for Sephron and capture Thane for execution.
So Zaira is stripped of all her illusions. She is surrounded by undead assassins. She has been profoundly betrayed by the man she trusted most. And in that chaotic, terrifying moment, Zaira realizes something foundational.
If she wants to save her sister, she has to stop waiting for a savior. She has to stop relying on powerful, morally compromised sorcerers to fight her battles.
She has to take matters entirely into her own fragile mortal hands.
And this leads us directly into the climax of the narrative, where the true, terrible cost of magic is laid bare on the table. While Thane and the rest of the party desperately engage Malik and the assassins in a brutal, chaotic melee, Zaira makes a completely autonomous, radical choice.
She steps up to the glowing pedestal. She takes her own small dagger, slices her own palm open, and presses her bleeding hand onto the stone altar.
Because her intent to save her sister is still pure, the ancient magical aura shatters like glass. The heavy, leather-bound tome of Azadel drops directly into her hands.
She claims the ultimate prize. And then she does the unthinkable. She turns to Malik, the undead monstrosity who currently has a sword leveled at her throat, and she negotiates.
She looks the monster in his dead blue eyes and makes a desperate, incredibly dangerous deal. She tells him to call off his assassins. She promises that she will deliver the Tome of Azadel directly to Sephron herself, handing it over completely willingly, but only in exchange for Anala's immediate freedom.
She leverages the most sought-after, powerful magical artifact in the entire world simply to buy her sister's life.
Malik accepts the terms. In the chaos of the temple fight, Zaira manages to slip away from Thane, abandoning him and the found family, and begins the grueling journey back to the Mariva Empire alone.
But before she walks into Sephron's stronghold, she knows she can't go in empty-handed. She makes one crucial, highly tactical stop.
She goes back to the Scraps, the slum where she was first attacked. She navigates the dangerous alleyways until she finds a clandestine sorceress's apothecary, a bizarre sensory overload shop filled with thick pink smoke, floating orbs, and jars of unidentifiable biological components.
She slaps her remaining gold on the counter and buys a small reinforced glass vial containing a thick, dark purple liquid.
It is a highly concentrated, enhanced muting elixir, the same chemical compound the Divine used to strip the Night Carvers of their magic centuries ago.
She is walking into the lion's den, but she's bringing teeth. Zaire marches straight back into the oppressive gloom of the Shadow Nest, back into the dark, rotting castle where this nightmare began 30 days ago.
She demands an audience with the Grim Leader. She is escorted down the sprawling corridors and pushed into Sephron's lavish darkwood study.
And the scene inside the study is dripping with tension. Sephron is sitting comfortably behind his massive desk, completely smug. Malik, the undead assassin, is standing guard by the door, like a gargoyle.
Sephron thinks he has achieved total victory. He gloats to Zaira, explaining how the spells within the Tome of Azadel will finally give him the power to crush the monarchy, obliterate his enemies, and make him functionally unstoppable.
Zaira places the heavy tome in his desk. She fulfilled her end of the bargain. She demands Anala.
But Sephron is the god of corruption's greatest disciple. He was never going to honor a fair trade. He snaps his fingers, and guards drag a violently sobbing, emaciated Anala into the room.
But Sephron doesn't release her. Instead, he reveals his true, horrific master plan. He opens a velvet box on his desk and pulls out a jagged, violently pulsing crystal. It is a cursed artifact.
And the mechanics of this curse are worse than death.
Far worse. Sephron tells Zaira that he will release Anala right now, but only if Zaira voluntarily takes the cursed crystal into her own hands. If she takes it, the ancient magic will instantly bind her soul to the stone.
It's the battery metaphor.
Exactly. Think of Sephron's dark magic as a hyper-polluting, incredibly demanding factory. It requires a constant, massive energy source to run.
Zaira's soul, which the Temple of Elford just proved, is purely noble, deeply selfless, and incredibly resilient, is the perfect, pristine river.
If she takes the crystal, Sephirin is going to plug his polluting factory directly into her soul, siphoning off her pure energy to fuel his dark magic forever.
She will be trapped in a state of eternal, agonizing spiritual decay, serving as a living battery for the monster who tortured her family.
It is the eternal commodification of her soul, a fate infinitely worse than dying. Anala realizes what is happening and starts screaming.
She begs Zaira to run. She thrashes against the guards, screaming that she would rather die right here on the floor than let Zaira sacrifice her eternal soul.
But Sephirin is a master of leverage. He nods to Malik. The undead assassin steps forward, grabs Anala by her fragile throat, lifts her off the ground, and slowly begins to crush her windpipe.
Sephirin looks at Zaira with cold, dead eyes. He is forcing her hand. Watch your sister choke to death right now or give me your soul forever.
And this exact moment is where Zaira absolutely proves the core tenet of the teachings of Orvina. The bravest in heart is the source of true prosperity. Zaira doesn't hesitate. She steps forward and grabs the pulsing, cursed crystal.
But she doesn't surrender. The absolute millisecond, her fingers close around the crystal and she feels the dark magic burn into her skin. She weaponizes it.
She pivots, utilizing all the momentum in her body, and slams the jagged, magically charged point of the cursed crystal directly into Malik's dead blue eye.
The study erupts into absolute chaos. Malik drops Anala, howling in unnatural echoing pain as the cursed artifact disrupts his necrotic nervous system.
Sephirin roars in fury and lunges across the massive desk, grabbing Zaira violently by the collar of her tunic, but Zaira was waiting for him to close the distance.
In that exact second of physical contact, she reaches into her pocket, pulls out the glass vial of dark purple liquid she bought in the scraps, uncorks it with her thumb, and violently splashes the highly concentrated, enhanced meeting elixir directly into Sephirin's face and eyes.
And the chemistry works. The elixir sears into Sephirin's skin. You can almost hear the magical connections snapping.
His innate connection to the magical currents of Thelanor is instantly violently severed. The most powerful grim sorcerer in the kingdom collapses to the floor, grasping his face, rendered completely miraculously powerless by a mortal baker.
But the threat isn't over. Malik, though blinded in one eye, is still an undead killing machine, and his dark magic isn't tied to his own biology anymore.
He recovers, raises his hands, and uses his invisible telekinetic grip to slam Anala brutally against the stone floor, raising a dagger to finish her off.
Just as Malik's arm arcs down to strike the fatal blow, the heavy oak doors to the study literally explode off their hinges. A grim guard's body flies backward through the splintered wood, crashing into a glass display cabinet. And stepping through the smoke and debris is Thane Valkor.
Thane didn't abandon her. He trapped her across the continent, and he is entirely unhinged. His golden eyes are sparking with volatile magic. He doesn't hold back.
He unleashes massive, concussive bolts of his gray magic, sending Malik crashing backward through a heavy wooden chair and blasting the powerless Sephirin into his own towering bookshelves.
Thane deploys every ounce of his volatile gray magic, engaging Malik in a blindingly fast, brutal sword fight, fighting with everything he has just to hold the undead assassin off for a few seconds.
Amidst the flashing blades and shattering glass, Thane locks eyes with Zaira and gives her a single sharp nod. Zaira doesn't hesitate. She grabs the gasping Anala by the arm, and the three of them sprint out of the study, fleeing through the dark, winding corridors of the castle, running desperately toward the docks to escape the shadow nest.
They burst out into the cool night air, sprinting onto the wooden planks of the docks. Thane is the rear guard.
He turns back toward the pursuing swarm of heavily armed grim guild members, raises both his hands, and throws up a massive roaring wall of magical fire to seal off their escape route.
They stand there on the docks, chests heaving, breathing hard, thinking for one fleeting, beautiful second that they have actually pulled it off. They beat the grim. They survived.
But as the flames roar behind them, a new, terrifying threat emerges. A woman steps fluidly right through the wall of fire. She is a sorceress with a long, intricate braid, wielding a terrifyingly potent, dark, purple magic.
With a casual wave of her hand, she begins disintegrating the remaining grim guards into piles of ash, asserting her dominance over the docks.
But the true, devastating cliffhanger of the novel isn't the arrival of this new, terrifying enemy. It is the quiet, horrifying realization of what actually happened back in Sephirin's study.
As they stand on the docks, trapped between the ocean and the purple magic sorceress, Thane looks over at Zaira. With his enhanced magical sight, he looks at her aura. He sees the energy flowing through her veins.
And the massive, lethal shadow assassin drops into a low, squat, sheer, unadulterated panic swimming in his gold eyes. His hands are trembling. He reaches out for Zaira's hand, struggling to find the words, his voice cracking.
And Zaira, watching Thane's absolute terror, slowly puts the pieces together. She remembered the burning pain when she grabbed the crystal off the desk to stab Malik. She remembers the ancient magic flaring to life against her skin.
She looks down at her own hands, looks back up at the man who betrayed her and then fought an army to save her, and she whispers the devastating truth. It means I'm the one who's cursed now.
The ultimate heartbreaking sacrifice. Zaira proved the ancient texts right. She was the bravest in heart. But in the brutal world of Thane, bravery doesn't win you a medal. It comes with a devastating literal price.
She saved her sister's life, she dismantled a corrupt empire, but she inadvertently traded her own pure soul to the darkness to do it. The battery is plugged in, the curse is active, and she is the host.
So what does this all mean? We have traveled an unbelievable distance today.
We started in a quiet, flour-dusted bakery in the Mariva Empire. We survived the blood-soaked, splintered floors of the Kamtar Inn. We navigated the lethal, leech-infested, rotting jungles of the Shallows.
And we finally broke into the heart of a corrupt sorcerer's study to steal back a life.
We have unpacked a massive, complex story of found family assembled through trauma, of deep, calculated betrayals masquerading as protection, and the unbelievable, defiant resilience of an ordinary mortal girl navigating a world entirely populated by gods, monsters, and magical serial killers.
It is a masterful, deeply layered exploration of generational trauma, the corrupting influence of absolute power, and the terrifying, world-breaking weight of familial love.
And so, I ask you, listening to this right now, think about the Anala in your own life. Think about the person you are biologically or spiritually bonded to, the person whose pain feels like a burning pearl against your own chest.
How far into the dark would you walk for them? What fundamental parts of your own moral code, what pieces of your own uncorrupted soul would you willingly sacrifice to pull them back into the light?
It's the ultimate Christian. And it raises one final lingering thought, a profound mechanical and philosophical question that the text leaves hanging heavily in the air as the book closes. We know exactly how this curse works.
We know that a dark magical curse acts as a parasite. It feeds off the soul of its host to power its own corruption. Sephron explicitly designed this specific curse to punish a thief. He designed it to latch onto someone who had already compromised their morals, someone whose soul was already slightly tainted by greed.
Right. The curse expects to find a polluted river to feed on. But what happens when that exact same dark, parasitic curse accidentally attaches itself to a soul like Zaira's? A soul that the ancient temple of Elfar just verified is purely noble, fiercely selfless, and fundamentally beautifully uncorrupted.
That is the mystery of the sequel. Will the dark curse simply consume Zaira's pure soul, drowning her in agony just as it was designed to do?
Or will Zaira's absolute, uncorrupted, radiant spirit somehow act as a toxic poison to the dark magic itself? Will the sheer force of her defiant hope break the ancient curse from the inside out?
You know, we started this deep dive talking about maps and magical hierarchies, about wanting to categorize power neatly into sorcerers, bestials, mortals, light, and dark.
But Zaira's journey proves that the human heart defies categorization. You cannot quantify the sheer kinetic force of hope, and you absolutely cannot measure the breaking point of a sister's love. The diagnostic landscape of a human soul in crisis is chaotic, it is messy, and sometimes the only possible way to cure the darkness is by choosing to step directly into the shadows yourself. Thank you so much for joining us on this massive, incredible journey through Thane. Keep diving deep into the sprawling stories that move you, the complex characters that challenge you, and the moments that remind you of your own messy, defiant, beautiful humanity. We will see you next time.